I'm Definitiv, also known as Cyclin, and this is the Mind Over Meta podcast where I talk with fellow passive exile content creators about the meta, league start, mindset, and several other things. Today I have Aeroplane with me.
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
Thanks for being here, Aeroplane. Really glad to have you here. You are an amazing content creator in my perspective. I'm always looking forward to see what you have planned in league starts, as well as just your way you approach league starts. So that's also what I want to talk about today. But first, I would like to start with: could you introduce yourself and tell the viewers that maybe don't know you what content you do?
Cool. What's up, guys? So I'm Airplane with a zero. So yeah, I pretty much do content that's SC trade oriented, usually on League Start. And yeah, when it comes to kind of leagues that I play, so I play quite a range. Like, I don't enjoy playing one league for like 2 months, for example, but more of, just short bursts, like usually 1 to 2 weeks in SC trade. And usually I'll dip out into private leagues. So I play, pretty much a lot of private leagues out there, maybe a little bit too much, but things like BPL, scavenger hunt. When it comes to short leagues and competitions, then Gauntlet as well, HC, SSF kind of mode with increased modifiers and difficulty, and yeah, like Path of Exile 2, and yeah. And when it comes to like my content that I do is going to be creating new builds, creating new Alice strategies, and yeah, just racing, quote unquote, but not really because I'm too lazy to practice too much. So here we are.
You're still pretty sure you're still slightly faster than me, despite me trying to learn all the layouts.
Yeah, for myself, I like the only two layouts that I learned was mudflats and upper prison. I spent like I think like 30 minutes each or something like that. At some point, I was just like, I hate these zones so much in Act 1, and I have to do it on every single character, and every single practice that I do, I have to go through them. So I was like, okay, I just put on a mage blood character and read 30 minutes of that. But I didn't study a single layout. I just read the zone until I learned how to run it. That's
Oh,
what
okay.
happened. So I have my own tells and everything.
Hmm. All right, then let's jump into the first question with your thoughts on the Mirage League Mechanic. This is still before the league itself started, so we're still without actually knowledge how it feels in game. For those that might be watching this later.
Yeah, just too many unknowns, man. Like watching the trailer, so many ideas keep popping up, but a lot of it is going to be like, what is the drop rate of astrolopes? What is the expected loot, the EV you're gonna get from doing a vault? Do the vaults in the four different zones differ? What is the time it takes to complete each of these astrolopes? How does the keystone that actually affects managing the astrolopes actually work in the way I think it does? It's just so many unknowns, but very exciting, and we'll need to try it out to actually know how valuable it is. But yeah, really cool. Like doing the wishes. I think they showed like I don't know, like not many, like single digit number of wishes on
Hmm.
the stream. So we'll have to see what cool wishes that they have. Like I think something that's going to be the most exciting for me is going to be like last league. It was like the drought league with lacking number of like atlas strategies. So I actually created a new atlas strategy around using petals, for example. And I noticed that one of the wishes that was introduced had actually something similar, right? Like that monster cannot drop
Oh.
equipment, flasks, stuff like that. And then that pretty much can be a scarab strategy, right? But then comes back to the question on how often do you see these wishes? Is there a way to make it spawn more often? Like who knows, right? Like so many of these things.
Hmm.
So a lot of unknowns, but a lot of testing needed.
What do you think of the temporary power we are gonna be getting with the league?
Um, Yeah, I think it's insane for a lot of builds. For my build specifically, it's more of just like a tiny added boost, but I can see how it could be really insane for a lot of others, a lot of other builds that really can leverage. So I was actually recently thinking of in my previous stream, like when I was POBing, someone was like saying, "Oh, impute gems could be really strong," and then after that, I started thinking, right, like what we could add to Eye Winter because I'm playing a spell mind build and plus on gems is just insane for the most part. So like in my in-game pop, I was like a day 5 pop, I was like with a level 20 Eye of Winter gem, I'll have like 46 mil. And then with the +1 gem levels, it'll go to like 50 mil. But then when I popped out like a level 1 crit multi gem, like increased critical damage gem, that actually give like 100 plus 100 multi, and it's permanent, right? It's not like, for example, when you cast an Assassin's Mark on a monster and then you get the base crit and multi. So for general purpose mapping, it's significantly stronger. For single target, it's still a better gem, and it brought my that final DPS number from like 46 mil to 54 mil. So that in itself, like apart from the increased mana cost that it will probably come with, yeah, I think there's a lot of power creep, and not just your main skill gem, right? Like I think a lot of people don't think about how the imbue gems can actually be put on. For example, your shield charge, you can maybe have a faster attacks on,
Oh.
and then you can like minimize a lot of gems that you otherwise need to kind of supplement your ancillary skills like Frostblink. You can add Cull, for example, and then you can just, trim down the number of trash supports that you have for your other skills, and then, push your number of gems that you can use for that even further. So yeah, just some ideas.
I didn't even thought of that. That is actually really smart, having all your utility links reduced by one socket. That is a huge saver for things like Golemancer that have everything filled to the brim.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that is definitely huge. You think that we are able to actually juice with the Mirage League mechanic, or is it gonna be similar to Breach? It was really powerful early, and then later on we just went and did stuff that wasn't related to Breach at all.
Surface level. Okay, so what I think of breach is that, so 2 out of the 3 breaches last league was unstable breach plus fortress within the zone, right? And those replaced existing monsters that otherwise would be within the area of that breach. However, there was one that created a new area that when you enter, okay, it did replace, a bunch of an area as well in your map, but it created a new zone with significant number of monsters, and that's the hive. That added a lot. So Mirage Mechanic is actually more similar to that option, where it actually it's just a net increase to the number of monsters in your map always. Of course, the amount of that differs. I think I'm hearing things like in some maps it's going to be a section of the map. In some maps it could be the whole map gets covered in Mirage. So once again, right, it comes back to that. What actually happens most of the time, and what can we do to play around that and most benefit from that? I think that's still up in the air. But otherwise, it's just a net positive in number of extra monsters that you can get, which, at surface level is just insane for any juicing mapping builds. And I can absolutely see why Fuckguns wanting to build a map blaster again. No surprises there.
So I think it's gonna cause a limitation with it being a separate zone and including a load screen.
I don't think so. I didn't see if it's in trailer, but I would be really surprised if you need to load into a new zone. I think I saw a
They
Reddit thread
confirmed that.
yesterday.
There was apparently some confirmation on a Reddit thread.
No way. I saw the Reddit thread yesterday, and then I went to sleep. I guess GG replied after, but people were worried like minions, they will like desummon. So that's like Pepega, dude. That's a nightmare.
It's gonna be slightly rough for my Phantasm starter, but I can summon him fairly quickly. So I think minions is fine, but a lot of people were like, Golden Charlatan, Shrine stacking, let's go, and then the Mirage map is just resetting you back to 0 power.
Headhunters, Inspired Learnings, F.
Yeah, exactly. Mageblood League incoming.
Oh, you mean the new belt? What was it called?
The Shrine one in Magebloods, yeah.
Yeah.
That belt is actually insane. I'm already thinking of a couple builds that you trying to use it in the most niche way.
Calm down now. 600 diff acceleration belt.
Just need to buy early.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's gonna be an expensive one, but a really, really good one. You have any other thoughts about the core part of the next league? Surprise Atlas change, the new skills or anything?
Yeah, I think one of the cool one, which is what I'm planning to do, is going to be nightmare map farming, and Ubers on day 2. I think just because a lot of people are moving towards, just map blasting in general, that is going to be a lot of demand for, content that requires single target, and there's going to be, that content I just mentioned. And I think one additional part of it that I think was overlooked by a lot of people is that the nightmare maps are actually craftable. So, in that the little page reveal, I think there's like a lot of things that they showcase. One of it was the nightmare map. And something I noticed was that you can apply chaos. Previously on T17s, You have the mod that has you can only apply Chaos Orbs, Val Orbs, and Chisels to the T17s. That's gone now, and
We
which
can
means you can
scour
scour the
them?
map.
Yes!
It does seem that way. You can scour them, and
Oh, that makes
then
them so
that
much
also means
easier.
that if you're a bosser and you can be asked to do services, what's gonna happen is you're just gonna scour that Citadel or Ziggurat, call in 4 people or something, and then yeah, just sell like one Atlas passive carries because each of the nightmare maps gives one Atlas passive now.
And it still needs to unlock for the Scarab slot.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the first one, I guess.
Yeah. The first one is Scarab slot, and
Right.
everybody else is just an additional Atlas passive.
Yeah, like
And
services is
that's a
going to
huge
be
find. I didn't notice that.
yeah, like services is going to be so much money next league.
I try to not do services. I'm going also likely for bossing, but I'm doing it on a minion build. It's
Right.
gonna be
Yeah. For
fun.
myself as well. Like my content, no services, no crafting, just blasting.
Yeah, we get to that later. I'm really curious about your thoughts on some of those things. Um, what do you think about the Tombstone progression? That one kind of changed with the second stone not being from the second Eldritch boss anymore, from Eta Exarch.
Yeah, I think 2 stones is just slower and 4 stones is faster.
Oh,
That's where it
interesting.
is. Yeah, I heard an interesting take. I was watching the Palstroms podcast. They just posted one, and Garatha had an interesting take. He's saying that the hardest boss, in his opinion, for new players is going to be Exarch. That was like, oh, maybe.
Why Exarch?
But yeah, Maven's just still going to be, in my opinion, the harder one. But yeah, like Exarch balls, if you have no damage, you're going to just struggle. But yeah, it's an interesting take.
I thought with the change from adjacent map to generic increase map drops. I mean, it comes down if they change the base map drop amount or rating. But it could be that getting into T16s is going to be really quick now, actually. And we are always increasing our completion by 1 in an EDL case, right? We're never running an unnecessary map just to get to the next higher tier. So I assumed that
Yeah,
the progression up there is going to be faster. But if it's faster, then we are going to be weaker when we approach the 2-stone bosses.
yeah, I think would be so like the prog. I think because we need to get, if I'm not wrong, we need to get the cornermost map that's connected to like that extra square at the top right or something. So I
Mm.
think we'll like reach there in the shortest number of maps possible, and then after that, once you get that, you go to the next quadrant, and then you do the same pathing all the way to the top. But once you have the maps, it's just like one map in the shortest path all the way up to the corner. So I think that's going to be the meta progression. What I'm worried about is going to be if you start not on the Ether Exarch side and you start on the Maven side, XD, dude. So yeah, like I don't know if we are told what the each of the corners are.
There's an image of it in the package in the dev. Wait, let me look this up. In the press kit, that was the term.
Right. But yeah, it could definitely screw people over
Yeah,
who
new Atlas
choose the wrong
UI.
quadrant to start on.
So it looks like top right is Cortex and Shaper Elder. Top left is the memory chains. So this means then bottom right is Maven and bottom left is Exarch Eater.
Oh, I actually haven't seen this yet.
Oh, okay.
Point still
Then,
stands. You start the wrong side, but yeah, you start the wrong side, you're gonna get screwed.
but then this would mean that we need to reach the corner, a T16 map, before we can do the Polaris invitation and the Screaming one, the mini
I
boss
think I think
invitations.
so, but I might be wrong. Like who
Interesting.
knows?
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely something fun to discover next league.
Yeah, you can see the bottom right map right here on your screen. You can see that line, the dotted line at the bottom
Yeah,
right. Yeah, yeah. Like that's what I think it is. Then you get access once you reach the cornermost map of each of the 4 quadrants.
interesting. Yeah, that's definitely so. Everyone go bottom left first, and then go top left for your first 2 stones, and then go right, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, looks like it. We'll have to see about the details of that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna study the press kit after.
I always one of the first things I do when the page goes up, I click download press kit. There was one PE2 league where they just had their senses in the press kit. They didn't mention them on stream, and in the press kit were their senses. That was actually the
Wow.
first 0.1. That's how we knew. No, it was 0.2 actually, I think, not 0.1. Because we learned the tactician, we learned one of the hunt with the senses, we learned the ritualist. Yeah, point 2. They just put the
But
senses in
it's
the press kit. All the notes.
secret tech right there.
Yeah, always look the press kit. So moving on to the next subject, a little bit about how do you prepare for your leagues? When you look at the next league, when do you start your preparation? How do you start your preparation? And how do you go through the steps?
I guess when first is going to be, I guess when I have time, when I feel motivated enough to come back. Because usually after every cycle, I just dip out once I feel like I've farmed enough and no longer feel any like sense of progression or what am I doing in the game. Usually I'll dip out after like 2 weeks of playing Period 2 or Period 1, and then that's where I start looking at like the teasers, the releases. But generally it usually starts after I like sometimes if I feel motivated enough, I try to come up with some new builds before league start. I think before 3.27, that's where I was testing a lot of like CDR trappers. There's some ideas. I saw some cool skills, like I was just going through the gem list, and I saw like lightning trap of sparking. I saw like ball lightning of was it ball lightning? No, it was some other skill. Or lightning spire of
I
overloading,
think
and yeah,
lightning
like
spy.
traps look insane, like in terms of the numbers and mechanically strong. So I wanted to test them out, but of course, they have their shortcomings.
Hmm.
So yeah, like I'll just do some testing if I'm motivated enough, and then yeah. But most of the actual cooking comes after the patch notes reveal, and that has an indicator of the winners and losers, and usually you kind of not want to play a loser in that sense. And yeah, like in terms of preparations, most of my league starts have been geared towards single target oriented classes. So for the past like at least 3 or 4 leagues, for what I can remember, like I've been building single target skills, so mostly just mines and traps for the past few leagues. And I realized this after, I think, was it Frisia 1? Frisia 1, I still played a blaster. I think I started Wild Speaker, just anyhow Spectrum. And
Hmm.
then I went into, I just wanted to try something new, right? As a blaster, you're going to get to things ahead of others. And I wanted to do, Legion 5 ways, for example, with like Hit Hunter and stuff. But I realized that the amount of currency that I can make in there as a solo player is going to be less than groups. So it would make more sense that as a solo player, I want to do content that other people can do. For example, like groups. Sure, they can get to that place, slightly faster, but at the end of the day, it's going to be one person in that zone doing it better, and that's where I settle on. I'm never going to do Legion 5 way start again. For example, like I'll be doing content. For example, Ubers is going to be to some degree skill based as well, not just a currency check or gear check. To some extent it is, but for example, like Ben on the same gear can do it better than I can. For example, maybe I'll die on average like 2 times, Ben dies 0 times. So like with that example in mind, like doing Ubers is one of the content on League Start that I have been leaning more towards, and it is usually very profitable. Previous leagues is all like slams. You go to Fortress early, you drop Uber Shaper fragments, and then you kill Uber Shaper, and then you sell the helmets and the belt and whatever. So yeah, like the past few leagues, I've just been following that kind of concept and building currency early on, entering early 17s and Ubers, and it has been working very well for me.
Nice. What's your favorite Uber? Like
Uh,
mechanical wise.
Mechanic wise, huh? I think they're kind of cool ones. I don't really okay, I think Cirrus is the worst, I think. I don't know, man. I don't like that one. That's like bottom for me. And then Exarch is more of like a couple of checks you need to do, like ignite immunity. Have a movement skill that allows you to dodge balls a little bit. Movement speed is going to be very nice in that fight. Stuff like that. But otherwise, not too horrible. Yeah, I think top two for me, given like ease of difficulty, is going to be like Uber Shaper and possibly Uber Eater. And those are some of the fights that you just need. For example, like Uber Eater, right? There's only Fizz and Lightning in that fight, which means that if you're
Hmm.
negative 50 fire res, like like it doesn't matter. So it's not that hard to gear around, and it does mostly spell damage. So yeah, that like fun fact, like Uber Eater was the first Uber I killed in hardcore. So that's a bit of a fun one for me. I did it on Hex Blast Mines.
Wow. Oh, good old
So
Hex
yeah,
plus mines.
yeah, not your E Blade or EE Trickster, dude. That doesn't count, dude.
I remember the league Uber Eater got introduced and Nemesis got introduced. I did one singular Uber Eater. I got Nemesis out of it.
Too easy. What was it,
Yeah.
2% drop rate?
I don't know. I didn't want to check. I just was like, yeah, got it, playing it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have played Nemesis that league. So I was very happy about that.
I think I have a pretty decent Nimbus drop rate, to be honest. I think I did like the free show one. I dropped it in like 7 or something.
Well,
It was good enough, but not your one, dude. Not your one.
that's impressive. All right. So moving to still your favorite thing, but this time your favorite league starter. What is the most comfy or your most favorite league starter you've played so far?
I'm assuming you mean like SC Trade.
Yeah.
Yeah, SC Trade. I think. Uh, Let me think back. Like Xang Reap was okay. Like honestly, the league start it was a bit spicy. I did feel a bit paper, and the damage was a little bit lacking early on, but it definitely ramped to the sky after that. So that was, I wouldn't say my highest. The poison traps one had like a bunch of uniques that I need to kind of like pop off. So that wasn't like top tier for me. I think recently one of the most exciting and most fun I had was KF Ballista Totems that I played in actually one of the private leagues. I think that was like the comfiest 4 stone. But of course, scaling that past that point was a bit tricky because you need a lot of gear, and in a limited like GSF or SSF-ish environment, that would be a bit tricky. I did enjoy a lot of Storm Burst totems, and I think in the recent league, like this patch, I think it's one of the most underrated totem skills on top of Fusillade. I think Storm Burst totems is Fusillade with higher single target but slightly worse clear, in my opinion. So I think it's one of those totem builds, unironically.
Interesting. And if one skill that is mechanically nice to you but doesn't have quite the damage numbers, or maybe has the damage numbers but needs quality of life buff to feel good as a league starter, what would that be?
Huh. Quite a few actually, but off the top
Oh.
of my head, I can't tell you. Like I can't remember. But I remember PO being a lot of builds usually before league start. I'll just look at gem numbers. Pull together like a proof of concept of like how I would want to gear the build and scale it. But I can't remember. Oh, one of it's I think lightning arrow of electrocution. I don't think anyone's ever talked about it apart from me, but it's like EA but for lightning. Always wanted to make that work, but it's just dog shit. So maybe that's one of it.
Interesting. All right. Then I have one more major question in regards of league starting. I guess one more later, but this one is for now. How do you keep yourself engaged? You said earlier at some point you feel like you're done and you stop playing. How do you keep yourself engaged initially at league start? How you keep to push the content, to go into the T17s, to go for the Uber bossing? Yeah. How you keep
Yeah,
yourself
I think
motivated and
that's
engaged?
yeah, that's the most fun part of the league for me. Like the first like 3-4 days when you're just adding additional pouring currency into your build, getting that additional power level to your character, that dopamine, you buy this item, you map this much faster, you do this much more damage. I think that's the most fun part. And also it's like, it's juggling so many things like what are you going to do to optimize, getting this currency and meeting the next objective, in as short a time as possible, right? Because the league start is just trying to get to that place where you want to do the content you want to do, or whatever it may be, as fast as possible. Maybe for Falcon, it's going to be like, 8 hours in, I want to be doing T16 Legions, for example. And it's like getting to that point and having that plan and executing on that plan, I think is the most fun part. That's why to some degree, like the it is a bit tricky sometimes with the league mechanics that I usually skip as much as I want to be like, the grim roll, in-depth testing of all the league mechanic within the first 3 days, but it takes away from that buying of gear and feeling that progression of your character. And yeah, just that dopamine of getting this, reaching there, killing Ubers this much faster, getting these drops, and and yeah, so it reaches a certain point where I've gotten mage blood, upgraded my character up to the 80-90% of where it could be, and not pushing it that much further. Like I wouldn't go into like mirror tier gear and stuff. I generally don't. I think the only league where I mirrored gear was like Affliction, and that's when we were like dropping mirrors off the floor, so that's
Affliction was
fine.
crazy.
Yeah, I think we dropped. I think I played solo. I dropped like one mirror, and then I played with Camo duo, and then we dropped like another mirror or two, and of course a lot of uniques as well. But I mean, apart from that league, usually I don't take it to like corner levels of 2 month farms, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. It's mirroring items also not been really the thing I always do, but when I do it, it always feels really rewarding when you get there.
Yeah, for sure. Like triple synth quiver on like Frisia one playing a Whisperer. Yeah, that's good.
So one last thing about the league preparation for now. How do you make your early currency? You said you're pushing into T17s, you're pushing into Ubers by day 2, but how do you get your character to that point that early? What do you do before that?
Right. So I mean, it comes back to executing on the plan. So, and I guess taking a step back. Like, there's two ways to approach a league, right? Either you play a build you want to play, and then you decide the farm you want to do, or you decide the farm you want to do, and then you pick the character you want to play that optimizes on that farm. For myself, for most leagues, I do think it's more what I want to play, and then I pick the farm, given that there's multiple good farms nowadays. So it's not like this one is going to be the de facto best. So that's fine. So and then it comes to the point which I was talking about, which is executing on the plan, and what the plan will be will depend on the character that you're playing. So for myself, it's going to be a more single target oriented build. So I need a couple things, which is currency to be able to start Ubers on day 2, and XP as well. Because once you start like nightmare maps and Ubers, like especially that early on, you're not going to be able to get any XP. So my plan this time around was to get the XP and currency. I'll be doing June early on up to like as high a level as possible. And also in recent leagues, I think there's been more and more popularity in all flame farming strategies. So that feeds into kind of the additional loot that you could get out of Syndicate, which is very nice. Things like Gold Rodas dropping the Gilded All Flames, and Kulamak from the Syndicate encounter, and Ethereal. So like just a run that I did on Eye of Winter, just fresh run. By the time I killed 2 stones, I mixed in Jun. That's my strategy next league. I've already dropped 1 Ethereal and 2 Gilded All Flames. So by day 2, that's probably like 4 diff or something in currency.
Not
And
bad.
yeah, usually I probably need somewhere around 10 to 20 D before entering Nightmares and Ubers. That's usually the ballpark, which we should be able to get by start of day 2, hopefully.
And when you say the plan, do you mean you also have a very clear image of what upgrades you need at what and what you need for the minimum endpoint to enter the Ubers and the T17s?
Exactly, yeah. So I guess the 2 points there is the items I need. So usually before every league start, I create like a full template for better trading. So this is the extension. I'm not sure if you use it, but you kind
I
of
do.
plan all your trade searches beforehand, and then you just need to like left click on it on Path of Exile trade, and then yeah, it's just your searches there. So before league start, you have the first your kind of like your day 1 whoops already prepared. Activate live search, and you just buy it once you have the currency for your kind of like your major upgrades. Exactly, yeah, those. And yeah, the second point, which is the breakpoints in which I'm able to kill Ubers. So different builds need different levels of defense and offense to do it. So with mine builds and trap builds, I'm very familiar with the amount that I need. So for example, like 13 million is where I can probably on average do Ubers with average 1 to 2 deaths, for example. And then by the time I reach like 17 million DPS, I can probably average 0 to 1 death per Uber. And then of course, when you go past that, it just means you do Ubers faster and faster, which is more currency per hour.
Oh, yeah. That's actually one of these things that I always try to do at league starts, but never quite get hang of, or never quite get down. But it's definitely something that I think is a really good approach to league starts, which is also why I really like your opinion on league starts and your thought process on those.
Yeah. But of course, right? Like when it comes to Uber farming, a lot of it depends on you, right? Because like comes back to the example, right? Like Ben on this gear, he can kill Uber, but
Mm,
me on this gear, probably not, right? So as a player with like less skill or with less experience with doing those Ubers, like you definitely need a lot more gear to be able to overcome that skill difference. So being a skill-based content that you do on Leaguestat, I think is very rewarding for a solo player who invests time into wanting to get better at doing the content, that specific content, which is very cool. And there's not many things that allows you to do that in this game, to be honest.
mm. I, I guess, yeah, there's. Have you ever tried Valdo mapping? I guess that's the other thing that
No,
is really
actually.
requiring skill level.
Like I always say, I love softcore trade. I love dying. I love being able to die and not get severely punished. Sure, minus 10 XP, but XD. So Valdo mapping is kind of like that middle ground before that, where there's like medium core where you die, you lose that loot, a bit like heist. But I mean, heist is not that deadly. And of course, to the ultimate end content of auto mapping, which is you die, you void your character.
Yeah,
So I
not
don't
typical then.
particularly, I don't think I enjoy that kind of content and that stress and pressure. Like if I want to do that, like I probably do it in Gauntlet once every 2 leagues, but outside of that, probably not. But yeah, I can see myself in the future exploring this area. I've definitely been looking at Valdo builds for the one on and off every once in a while. I know Jung actually does a lot of exploration into Valdos. He's done some himself. I know some other content creators out there also
Mm.
doing Valdos. So I've been looking at some POVs here and there, but yeah, mostly it does deviate to specific kinds of builds, given that there's specific modifiers on Valdos that you need to build around.
All right, that is, yeah, overall a pretty good opinion on those. I personally really dislike the concept of void maps. I also absolutely dislike the concept of hardcore. The sort of I lagged for a moment. I did a tiny mistake. My entire character is gone. My entire progression is gone. That would just ruin the league start for me. I'm very happy in softcore. I actually moved away from I'm okay with deaths because I noticed that when I keep dying in a map or when attempting bosses or T17s, I also don't enjoy that. So I would like to build tanky, but I don't like the punishment of losing everything if I do die.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Moving on a little bit away from your league start and looking at a broader picture, what do you think of the impact on the meta of 328 compared to
Impact of the
327?
meta.
And I
I
guess in
think
both content
over.
and builds.
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, we can definitely see a shift. T17 is no longer. I think I've heard that it's not affected by like the skill tree or something. And yeah, it's just a lot. The
That's new to
numbers are a
me.
lot. Yeah, there's just a lot less juice when it comes to the numbers which you can scale for, like the more currency multipliers.
Hmm.
Um,
Not that I knew,
but a
but you
lot of
just
it
said not affected by the passive tree.
for the nightmare maps, but you can still use the 16s or 16.5s to farm.
Yeah, sorry. To clarify, you stating that nightmare maps aren't affected by the Atlas passive tree. Where did they state that? I didn't know about
I
that.
can't remember. I think I saw it somewhere, but I might be mistaken. I saw it in the was it in the trailer or the content reveal? But it's just a huge brief passing in my head. It's just at the back of my mind, like the nightmare maps were not affected, but we may need to fact check that. But
Yeah,
that aside,
that is
I do think
important.
like a lot of numerical values did get dropped. We did lose a lot of map effect, for example, in 3.27. And yeah, it's just a lot less juicy. But what we got in return is the astrolopes to be able to add additional juice, which a lot of people are very hyped about. That the amount of loot that we're going to get from our maps is going to be higher than we did last league. Still, that's the expectation. So yeah, it might be just mapping, but with additional tools to be able to juice that further. And there's going to be like the quote unquote sextants, which is the astrolopes that's going to be coming. And that's the meta shift that I think the community is that I'm seeing the community having, which is moving towards T16 blasters, right? Like Fakun put out his video on wands and bows just out, so he's likely going to be playing that, and chances are, there's going to be a good amount of player base adopting the same. So I'll be
Yeah.
league starting with, I think, a couple of SG realm people, and yeah, like two of them are playing wands. They're going to be playing K-pop macro, so yep.
Oh my. Crafting wands without the Genesis tree is gonna be fun.
Yeah, gambling for wands is the worst thing. I feels like feels the worst. If you know, you know.
That for sure. I think. Yeah, no, I did Power Siphon in a BPL once, and basically just used the Flaskcraft for the lightning because anything else was impossible to get anything good off. Anything else was
Yeah, like Paul
impossible.
Siphon. Well, it wasn't a recent BPL, but yeah, like Paul Siphon is like, yeah, it's definitely a
It
shadow
was
of
one
its
of the
former
settlers
self. Post nerf.
BPLs.
Yeah, that was his prime.
Yeah. And you think with the build shift is gonna be overall healthy for the game, or you think it's still not enough?
I think it's okay. Maybe it's a little bit like I don't know if it's healthy or not, but at the end of the day, for me, like where it concerns me is going to be if a lot of people are going to be doing mapping content, like there's going to be, based on supply and demand, right? There's going to be a lot more demand and less supply for bossing related loot, which is the reason why I once again, no surprise, chose to do Uber content this league, just because demand and supply. Hence, chose that path.
Hmm. All right. Then I guess finishing this episode with the question: do you have any big recommendation to a beginner that is usually not mentioned in like beginner build guides or just generic build guides or strategy guides?
Wait, you mean like creators?
No, yeah. Any recommendations from you to players that are either coming over from PoE2 to PoE1 or looking to improve in PoE1? And I already have played it a bit to get better at the game earlier into higher end content.
Right. I mean, some of it depends on motivation, I guess. Like for me, getting fast at the game and kind of like starting to get to maps faster, for example, was a means to an end, as I always say. And yeah, I just wanted to like I started off like SE trade. I always wanted to be able to earn currency faster, and because of that, I started putting in time to practice. So
Hmm.
when it comes to early game racing, of course, we can check out the like streamers who do a lot of early game racing. Just for example, nowadays there's a lot of videos being posted on like two-stone runs, Act 10 runs. So I think that's going to be a starting place to look at. I think there was a recent Reddit post on links to pretty much every single run of different skills. So just pick one you like. Watch the video. Pick up things and be very active about learning. Like you can do practice runs and not learn anything. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is just being active and learning and pinpointing exactly where and how you want to improve and what you want to achieve in your first day, first 2 days, and come up with a plan for a solid league start.
All right. Sounds pretty wise. And with that, I do appreciate you joining in on here. I had a lot of interesting takes. Oh, sorry, you had a lot of interesting takes, a lot of for me to think about as well. So very glad to have you had here, and hopefully again someday.
Thanks for having me. Good talk. Thanks, Cyclone.